All right, hit the live button. So we are good to go. So welcome. Thanks everybody for joining us. I'm Tyler Matthews. I'm the Executive Director of Venture Cafe St. Louis. So this is another episode of Venture Cafe Live. These are casual interviews that we do with different companies and entrepreneurs. And to hear what they're working on and the different initiatives, the different projects, all sorts of stuff that the St. Louis community is building these days. And whether they're expats, transplants, or locals, we want to know what people who've got ties to St. Louis are doing. And today I'm really excited to have Jim Eberlin join us today. He is the founder of Planful, Gainsight, TopOPPS, which all were started here in St. Louis. And I'll let Jim speak for himself here, but we know that Planful had an exit back in 2019 for over hundreds of millions of dollars, and then Gainsight, which is the one that was most recent, for 1.1 billion, and TopOPPS is still going. So we're excited to have Jim share, what he's done to build these three successful companies, and then also share a little bit more about the exit and what he thinks is, what he sees success for in the St. Louis community, specifically with startups. So Jim, welcome. Appreciate you jumping on today.
I'm really excited to be here. This is always a lot of fun.
So just if you could, just to kick stuff off, can you give us like the elevator pitch of what you do?
I've done three companies now, and I've done Planful, Gainsight, and now TopOPPS. The latest one is TopOPPS. Certainly, it's kind of like every coach, right? Your current team is always your best team, but you always love them all, right? So TopOPPS I'm excited about. Where it's an AI solution that helps sales leaders forecast and manage their team, and so it's the latest thing I've got going on. And then I did, of course, Gainsight before this. I founded that company. It's big in what's now called Customer Success. And then Planful was the one before that. That was like finance in the cloud. It was that ship finally came in, around a year ago. So that was good too.
Very cool. And you're a St. Louis guy, right?
Yeah, grew up here, almost went to the Bay Area because Gainsight and Planful are now headquartered out there in Silicon Valley. So I was out on a plane after I raised my A round. I raised it from VCs out of the Bay Area. So I had to go out there. I was hopping on a plane every Monday and tried to talk my wife into moving out there. There's no way. So, happy wife, happy life. I stayed here. She made it clear we're staying here in St. Louis, and I'm glad of it. I love St. Louis.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get some of your insight here, especially for our audience who a lot of are aspiring or currently are entrepreneurs. And, St. Louis is just only really it feels like in the last year and a half has really started to see a lot more exits happening. And so, which has been really exciting. That's been something that people who've been in the startup community here for a while have been saying, we need to get more exits, and we're now starting to see it. And so I think what's on the minds of a lot of folks who are probably joining today are, how did you do it? So you've done it twice. So.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. And all of us founders, we all share this, you've got, my wife's got a bunch of funny stories about being about our endeavors as being in starting up companies. One thing that I've always been, we talk about, we've been married now for 32 years now. We've been married 32 years. And so sometimes they ask my wife, they're like, why do you stick with this guy? Because we all know what we go through as founders here. And she's like, I've never, ever considered divorce. Murder, on the other hand, maybe, so anyway, but, the St. Louis area is, if I compare it to other cities, especially what's going on in the Bay Area, there's a lot of companies actually moving out of the Bay Area right now. Now let's face it, the Bay Area's got the formula, and they have the best, as far as team, as far as product people, sales. For tech startups, they've got the best. You can't argue, right? They've got the most experience out there. And so they're always going to be number one, at least for a while. But St. Louis has a big opportunity now, especially with everybody working from home. We're doing Zoom now. We're all using Zoom. There is more of an opportunity than ever to draw in some of that talent. It's what we've got to do here in St. Louis. We've got to draw in some of that talent from the Bay Area. We've got to draw in, of course, that kind of investment. We've got Cultivation Capital here. They are awesome, and they're doing really well. Their picks are just great. I actually invest in cultivation, and my investment there has performed well. Lewis and Clark is here, and so, but we do need, we still need to draw in outside investment, and that's what I had to do. So, I mean, man, we go back to Planful. Planful used to be called Host Analytics, and I started that here in St. Louis. And I remember, I was out in the Bay Area, and I remember I think it was Emergence Capital or one of them. They're like, St. Louis, it's like a tech company in St. Louis. I thought you guys were like big in beer, and then he made it clear. He's like, I very rarely drive out to the East Bay, I'm not going to go out to St. Louis, but I learned a lot out there. And it just like anything, you just got to keep going, and you got to improve, and you got to adjust. And I remember I spent 3 days there. I befriended an investment banker that was from Mount Vernon, and he was a big Cardinal fan. And so that helped me. He introduced me to a lot of people out there, and it was kind of the numbers game, but it was also making sure I improved and learned from each pitch that I did. And so eventually I did get investment. And so, with Planful, the company ended up raising about 90 million in investment. I know at Gainsight, the total, Nick Maida's the new CEO there. And by the way, I always like to give a plug for my co-founder there, Sridhar Pendeni. He's done an awesome job. And then my CTO that I have now, I would like to plug him, Ashok Dagapudi. He is with me now. And that's what you need. You need someone when you found your company, you need someone that relates to the customer very well, that's got the domain knowledge. And then, of course, you need someone that's going to build it. And the more you kind of cross over into, learning each other, what we do, the better. But as far as strengths, I was always the guy that related to the customer and made sure that, once I identified a market, I crafted a solution that, hit that market, but it wasn't so obvious, right? Because the obvious things everybody crafts. And then, the third thing you got to do is that you have to manage to that for what's called product market fit. And your first version of your product is always going to be like, you're going to like approximately get it right, but eventually you have to precisely get it right. And that's what's so important. I can tell you with TopOPPS, I didn't spend as much time early enough on product market fit. Because as founders, we're going to have a lot of misses. It's what you do about your misses. And my miss was that I didn't spend enough time on product market fit early. But the good news I did here in the last couple of years, brought over my CTO, Ashok Dagapudi, he was with me at Host Analytics and Gainsight. It was awesome getting the band back together. And he built what we need to build into the product. And it was, we've done very well. I mean, I added 10 people like in the last month here in the company. So we're really growing now. But it was tough early on because my mistake, I didn't really spend as much time as I should in front of the customer, making sure that they're fully adopting, getting the value. Those are important things. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling all over the place on things that you need to do as founders, but
let me ask you. Yeah. Well, let me ask you about product market fit for a minute, because you said that was something you wish you spent more time with. Because I think when people are thinking, especially early stage entrepreneurs, everyone's familiar with the fundraising side of startups. But What is the right amount of time? Like, how do you know that you didn't spend enough time? How do you know when you are spending enough time talking with your customers?
Oh my gosh.
And finding product market fit.
Question, because, again, I'm trying not to say these things as just like, hey, just make sure you check these boxes, right? I'm trying to give you like real live experiences that we've had. So related to your question about like, how do you know that you're at product market fit? The first thing I did was I simplified my customer base. I made sure, like, I think the term, I know the term's called ideal customer profile. I hate using the terms that people set out there. It's just like, okay, it's the customer that fits you, right?
Yeah, very academic version, yeah.
Yeah, or personas and all that. But anyway, what I did was I narrowed down the customer base. So I knew that customers that churn for me were below a certain user amount. And so I really honed in on the user. It was basically, we sell software to sales managers and sales leaders that helps their entire team, but they had to have a big enough team. And I was focusing on a lot of smaller teams that were churning. They just weren't getting the value. And you need a very easy, clear mechanism to listen to the customer and to prove value to the customer. So you got to stay in front of them. Now there's a lot more. I'm definitely writing a book on this stuff. So we're not going to get all this in 20 minutes, but I'll try and answer questions if people have it. But you definitely need a regular mechanism to stay in front of them. But you got to make sure that your customer wants to meet with you, because you might just think, well, so what? I'll just schedule appointments. We'll meet with them on a regular basis. No, they got a lot of other important things going on. They don't look forward to training sessions every week, right? So you got to make sure that you've got a mechanism that really works, that you can get in front of the customers at the right time and make sure they're adopting in all of the areas of the product. I've been in sales forever, and we used to actually accept the 80-20 rule, that they would, basically use 20% of the product that they bought. We'd accept that. You can't now. You got to get the customer using all of the product. And that may mean that you have to adjust the product. So you got to stay in front of them to figure out, like, okay, this is working, this isn't working. They like this, they don't like this. This works great, but the customer doesn't really care. And, there's just different things that you really have to understand to get to product market fit.
So what mechanism did you use for, I guess, any of the three companies that you've run and are running to get in front of customers? And then I'll ask them other questions. But
so we have a legitimate customer success department. Now, when you're in startup mode, most of us, there's a lot of us in that, early stage, right? It's a shared position, but you have to have a specific role. It'll probably be shared by your implementers and your support people. So whoever's doing implementation and support is probably doing customer success. So you're going to have a clear definition of what happens in all three areas, even if one or two people or three people, whatever, are doing like all three roles. And so, you got to have objectives for all three. Obviously, support is different from implementation, which is different from customer success. Customer success is all about adopting and improving value to the customer. So the mechanism, I use a combination of technology and technique. So we have best practices of how we prioritize certain customers we use a product called Gainsight PX. It's really not that expensive. You can contact Gainsight and depending on the size of your company, it's pretty affordable. And there's other products out there too, by the way. But what PX did is allowed us to track in the product where the customers are using it and where they're not using it. And that helped us to prioritize where to contact rather than just like focus on everybody and just, call them at different intervals. And then we schedule what we call reviews, but we make the outcome of the review very desirable. So we are here in sales. It's all about making sure that their growth trajectory is what we set as the objective. So set an objective after you sell the customer, after you implement them, as far as the value they're to get. And then you set these meetings up front. The sooner you do this, if you can do this all up front, it's easier. And you can describe it in a way that they'll actually want to do this. It's not just some training session to get more productivity. So it's actually got a real ROI tied to it. It's got, it can be, you can do this to where, all of us founders know how to do these kind of things. I'm not going to teach you how to do that. I think you can do that.
Yeah. So let me change gear to the last few minutes we have here about the exit process. And how did you, what was the, as you're getting close to, the plan that you maybe had in your deck, or maybe the plan changed over time, but how did you end up getting that exit?
Oh, how did we get the exit at
Planful or Gainsight, I suppose.
Oh, well, what you have to do, I think what would be good related to that question, I think what a founder really needs to focus on are really three key areas. And, it's the fundamentals that'll get you eventually to an exit. And,
right.
And your strategy is, it's all based on your market, and your market is your funding strategy is based on your market. So let me compare and contrast my three companies. So with Gainsight was the best outcome that I had. And again, you got to give a lot of credit to Nick Mehta, who's the current CEO, and what he's done. But what we did early on is identified that this is a brand new market. So back when I started this, I actually started in 2009, but it really officially was 11, but it was kind of 2009. And no one knew what customer success was except the very top SaaS companies in the Bay Area. And so I just knew that this was going to take off and be a big thing. But since it's a brand new market, it's expensive. And, when you're meeting with investors, Midwestern investors, especially back then, aren't as interested in a thesis-based organization like Gainsight was. It was more thesis-based. In other words, I had nothing to prove, except the one thing I did is I drove up and down Highway 101 in San Francisco and got the 15 largest SaaS companies I could get. Back then it was Marketo, it was DocuSign, it was a bunch of big names. And I knew they had the same problem I was dealing with. I had the domain knowledge because of Host Analytics was by then, Planful was a big SaaS company. And so I met with the same, the chief customer officers of all these companies. They had the same problems we had at Planful, and I signed them up. Found a VC that had that as a thesis that this would be a big thing, and then it just took off from there. So the thing a founder needs to focus on is that what I just talked about, having the domain knowledge, the right market strategy, what I call the unfair advantage, and then you got to focus on customer adoption and product market fit. And comparing what Gainsight to Planful was not a new market, so I had to be somewhat efficient with my investment because it was transforming a market. And then TopOPPS is kind of doing that same thing, and I'm being super efficient with the investment in that company. So it's a little different strategy, but maybe when we get more time, I can talk, or if there's a question about that, we can talk more about it.
Yeah, I think what we'll do here is we're actually going to cut off the live stream here in a minute and then go to some Q&A with those who've signed up for the Venture Cafe website. So let's do that. So one last question though before we do. So now that you've had a couple exits under your belt, are you looking to get more involved on the investor side of the St. Louis startup community?
Yeah, I think so. I still got a lot of work to do with TopOPPS, but you know, and I can't take the eye off the ball there. But eventually, I will. I will most likely do that after TopOPPS. But like all of us founders, we're you know, right now we're just focused on this one thing of getting this to the right type of exit, and you know, which is good for St. Louis. I mean, ultimately what St. Louis needs is an ecosystem, you know, something comparable, but, you know, it doesn't have to be at the level of the Bay Area, but it does need an ecosystem. We need exits. Like, wasn't that great news today? 2nd Street was acquired by Eberlin. Not only is that good that we got the exit, but it's good that we're getting that kind of talent. Eberlin's a very successful, very, it's just a great SaaS company. We've got investors. I know a buddy of mine that's in the Bay Area invested in a company here locally called Debt Commerce. He's out of, you know, he has Riverside. He's more of a PE firm, but we need that whole ecosystem. All of that works. It's great. We need to get that talent in. We got to get the Uplands into St. Louis. We got Gainsight here now. You know, we've got certainly some planful people still here. We need to continue to get in talent from the Bay Area, investment, and eventually our community will take off.
So we just got to keep getting to work.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, with that, you know, can people find you on like Twitter or Clubhouse or anything like that?
Yeah. So you can certainly find me out on Twitter. LinkedIn me is a great way to contact me. So yeah, all that's really good. You know, Jim@topopps.com, also through email.
Got it. All right. Well, with that, we're going to sign off for the live stream, and then we're going to move to the private